So I'm using Math with Confidence by Kate Snow, who was a math educator and a now homeschooling mom. This is the second grade book. I'll add a picture to see it. It's a teach to mastery curriculum as well. It's very simple. It's actually incredibly affordable too, which I also love because I am spending a little bit more on the reading and writing curriculum. So the price point of it, I think, is fabulous. It comes with a teacher manual and workbook. I don't think that you need to buy anything else. I don't believe so. And what's really nice is that the teacher manual is very clear. It tells you you can read almost like a script from it if you want to, but you can also just read what the main point is for the next thing. Lots of games in it. The workbook itself, I think, is really fun. It's colorful, and it also, again, for me, someone that was looking for that bigger print and bolder type for my sort of vision impaired learners, this curriculum has bigger font and more bold font, which is really helpful for my guys when they're seeing it. I'm not having to blow it up for them, but I do like it. It's split up into units. There's a lot of practice and mastery of basic addition and subtraction skills. It builds upon each skill that you learn, which I think a lot of math curriculums do that. I do like how many games are offered in the program and how many additional, like if you're working on a topic that's really your kid's struggling with it, they give so many ideas of other ways that you could play around with the concept. All of our reading does that too, which I really like. And so I'm never at a loss for more ways of accessing the information in a different way or presenting it in a different way or playing around with it in a different way. And I tend to rip out the pages, and again, I kind of staple them by unit, and so we work on ones as we go. And with any math curriculum, though, I would say if you're doing any additional, so we use the workbook almost every day, but seasonally, for example, like Halloween, there are so many fun math, like either games or even worksheets or things like that you might want to do. So I won't sit down if it's like a page and there's half of it is a review of addition facts to 20, but we just did this math game that had addition facts to 20. I might just cross that out and not have not do that because we just did it in another format. So I have had parents say like, oh, do I have to do every piece of every worksheet? And I said, well, no, especially if you're doing it in another way. You could always leave it for repractice another time if you want, but you don't have to. I also split up the lessons a lot more than the teacher manual suggests. Their math lessons are a little bit longer than my child would like to sit for, and that's fine. So we tend to just split up the lessons that they would say would be one lesson. I often tend to do in 2 mornings. But we're moving along, pretty quickly with it. I've used it for kindergarten, first grade, and now second grade. So nice. I'm pretty happy with it so far, and planning to stay with it for a while. And like I said, it is very. I will say it's a great. It's a great price. Yeah, as far as homeschooling.
I like that it's colorful. I do like that the pages are colorful.
I do like it is colorful. And each unit is different colors. There's lots of games. And even some of the games that are fun too is like, because they're moving pieces or whatever, like I'll end up, my kindergartner will play the game with me and my second grader. He may not be doing the solving the problem, but he's moving the piece. So we're all kind of playing it together. Yeah. And so he might not be doing the subtraction problem, but he'll be like, oh, it's 20 and 7. And then my other son, Lee, will have to do the subtraction. Yeah. Or whatever. Like it's, it does kind of lend itself to that, a bit, which is fun.
That is nice.
And so I do. I'm a fan. So math with confidence for me.
Yep. Okay. All right. So mine is going to look very plain next to Anna's beautiful Math with Confidence. So I use a curriculum called Math You See. And I looked into a couple of different math curriculums. I landed on this one. My number one reason, and I don't have them with me, but we can put a picture, are because of the manipulatives that it comes with. So if you attended public school, I feel like at any point you probably are familiar with some base 10 blocks. So you've got your little 1 cube, you've got your 10 rod, and you've got your hundreds block. And so these manipulatives look just like that, except there's not just a 1, a 10, and a hundreds. There's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, and a 10, and then a hundreds. And all of the learning that you do with Math You See is with these manipulatives, or at least to start it is, which is really nice because again, it gives that visual, hands-on component to some of these trickier math skills. So it follows a very similar scope and sequence that, you start off with like basic numbers and kind of things like that, and then you get into, your addition within 10, and then we just finished the second book, Alpha, which is all about single digit addition and subtraction. And really, when they say single digit addition and subtraction, I don't know that there's anything else in here other than that. And it's very, regimented as far as the structure. Like first you're adding this and then you're adding that. And there definitely is a method to how they introduce each sort of addition fact or subtraction fact. But it is a lot of, so there's the visual piece, and then that lends itself to some mental math, which I'm a big fan of. Eventually the manipulatives, you can't carry them around in your pocket. You just either have to know the fact, so it's fluency based, or you have to have a strategy for figuring it out, which I really like. So, and the nice thing about Matthew C is that it does carry you all the way up to, that's not going to have it. This is the teacher's manual. I
will say I use Matthew C manipulatives. I bought them. Yeah. So if you I don't care what math program you use, I would recommend buying the Matthew C blocks, because regardless, they are an unbelievably amazing tool. I've never seen a math program that
they're so good.
Such good manipulatives. I wish I had those. When I taught math, it was those the ones, the 10s, and the 100s. I would have loved to have had the breakdown the way they go.
Yep. And so again, you probably won't be able to see it too well, but like along the side here, you've got, it goes all the way up to calculus with Matthew C, and they use the blocks up in, when you're learning about calculus. So the manipulatives you buy once, and then that's it. They carry you through. And then each year you have to buy, the next, whatever the next one. So we finished alpha, now we'll do beta. And after that is gamma and delta, epsilon, all that kind of stuff. So, and again, it could take you a year. It might take you a little bit longer. It really just depends. And it tells you what the skills are. And again, it's mastery based, so they can start at any level. If you've started with a different math curriculum and it's not really working out for you, you can always jump to Matthew C and just kind of, they have online like a placement test, and it'll ask you some questions about like, where's your child at? And then they'll spit out like a recommendation of where to start. So I use this. There's also a part of me though that I use this as my primary math curriculum, but then there's also a part of me that will look at the math standards for whatever grade my kids are in and say like, well, in this book of Matthew C, we didn't cover this. And this is a standard, and this is just like former teacher, this is the first grade standard, and to, feel okay about what we're doing, I want to make sure that we're hitting all the standards. So if Matthew C didn't have it, then I'll jump on Teachers Pay Teachers, or which is a lovely website.
You do not need to be a teacher to have access. You just need an email.
Just an email. You don't have to pay for like a subscription.
You pay for the things that you buy unless you find something that's a free resource, but you can easily go to the top and select filter for the age or the grade level and hit free if you just want to have free, or you can even say like things under 5 if you don't want to spend it, whatever. And if you could probably never even buy a curriculum and just buy things off teachers. You probably could. But it is, it's an unbelievable website and resource. I a lot of times at night will go on like the free, and then I'll type in something like, I don't know, Halloween second grade math pages, and that's what I find this really fun thing I did with my son the other day. But it's an unbelievably great resource. So if you were looking for a topic, or something wasn't covered well enough in a book, or even if you're reading a book with your children and they love it, like Charlotte's Web, and you want to find some, unit study to do on that book, you can go type in Charlotte's Web and put the age, like the grade, and that you will be hit with a ton of really great reviews. There are better ones. I think most of them are pretty good. I mean, I would say it's rare. I mean, anybody can post anybody who has a website and is part of Teachers Pay Teachers can post material, but I think it's rare you come across something that's pretty blah. I mean, it also is, there's ratings under each one, kind of like a seller on eBay. So you can see, and you can actually see ones that are have been bought and used often, and sometimes you can even see the preview of the material and stuff, but I mean, I'm on that every other day.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
looking at, even if I'm not, just because I'm curious and I want
see
to
what's out there. Yeah. So for example, like we took a break from alpha when we finished, and I was like, it's really important. I really want my kids to do money. Like that's a thing. And I'm sure, I don't know if in beta they do money. They might. I don't know exactly, but I just was like, I want to take a break from this because the workbook pages are like, I pull them out, but they are sort of like pretty blah. They're not super colorful like yours. It's very like, here are the facts. There's a lot, again, it's teach to mastery, so there's a lot of repeated practice. The first like 3 workbook pages are all about the skill that they just learned, and then the other 3 or 4 pages are just like a review, which is also kind of nice. But I wanted to take a break from this, so I just found like a 2nd grade money unit on there, and that's what we're doing right now. And then when we're done with that, then we'll go to beta and we'll work on multi-digit addition and subtraction. The other thing, and again, not to go down too far with the rabbit hole, the other thing I like about Math UC is that they are following the standards to an extent, but they're also sort of like pushing. So when we did addition within 10, they didn't wait to talk about adding hundreds. Like just 300 plus 500. Like if you know what 3 units plus 5 units is, or 3 tens plus 5 tens, then you can figure out what 300 versus 5. It emphasizes place value very early on, which I just think is so important, because that's where kids fall apart in their multi-digit addition and subtraction, is this inability to understand place value. So I really liked that. Overall, I do like it. The instruction manual sometimes leaves a little bit to be desired. They do have like lesson by lesson videos and like a little online component that you can use. I don't usually use it, and maybe that's why I feel like the teacher's manual, it's kind of just like, here's the skill, a couple of examples, and then okay, that's it, like move on to the next thing. So it's only like maybe 1 or 2 pages per like unit, but there's lots of opportunity for kids to practice it. But
so that, and I think math is one of those things too that is of note as a former teacher. I mean, no, I don't know any year that I ever got through the entire math curriculum. Like you're always choosing chapters or skipping chapters rather that you don't have time for in the math grade. So I think, like for example, the 1st grade book, that unit that I did with Leo, I think we finished at the end of the summer, because we kind of kept going, because I did do every one with him. And I remember thinking, like, had it been, this type of curriculum during the school year, we probably would have skipped the chapter on, I think money used to be skipped a lot in 1st grade. One on shapes and geometry was skipped often, because they have to prioritize the ones that are most important for them to be successful in the next grade, and they can pull that in at another time. And so I like that about it, with the homeschooling, especially with the math. I don't know, sometimes I feel like math might take you longer to complete, because you actually are completing the whole thing. And I just think for those who haven't been in education, it's very, very common for math, like in math, for you not to get through, teachers to get through the whole book. And in fact, they don't even plan on getting through the whole book. They specifically are like, we don't do chapter 7, we don't do chapter 9, we don't do chapter 11, because there's what they cannot get through.
Or they're like, oh, that happens in 3rd grade, because again, it's like, I swear, like these curriculum designers and standards, people who write the standards and people who write the curriculum are not on the same page, because it's like, well, that's not a 2nd grade standard, that's a 3rd grade standard, they'll get to that then, but yet it's in the 2nd grade math book. So I mean, maybe they're better now. It's been a little bit since I've been in the classroom, but that always made me sort of question things a little bit.
Or I feel like I remember very succinctly there being this like major issue when I was teaching with money, because money was a chapter that was often skipped, and the thought was that, well, money is something that often kids figure out with their parents, because like you use money to buy things and they make an allowance and they see change being made at stores. Like money is something they have access to, and so it tends to be something they learn without too much instruction at school. Until people started putting together, like, well, a lot of people don't use money anymore. It's all Apple Pay or credit cards. And so then there was all of a sudden this like gap where for so many years students, the chapter on money, because I think money is in most math books that we've seen from grades 1 to 5. Usually a unit on money at some point. And it was often one that was left out, because it was like, well, if we have time to get to it, great, but it's one they'll figure out, they'll learn. But it was like, but they aren't. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So, same thing. Time was another one that used to not always be explicitly taught. It was often skipped. And then all of a sudden you've got, fifth graders who can't read the regular, analog clock because everything, the digital clocks are all that they have now. And so it's not a skill that everyone's picking up on in money. So now they were kind of going back, and I was like, no, we got to throw in that money unit in first grade. We got to throw in that clock unit in third grade, because they aren't picking up the way that our world is now. They're not having access to it the same way. So I remember thinking that was interesting, that they needed to sort of reassess which chapters they were skipping. Well,
and it's interesting too, because when I was in Fall River, we would do in fourth and fifth grade, I think it was fourth grade too, fourth and fifth, they would do fractions. And for any of you who are new to new math or whatever, I like fractions, teaching it now, because they have different models. So they have for talking about adding and subtracting fractions or just comparing fractions, they have the money model and then they have clock model. And it's so interesting because it's with money model, you have to have the understanding of coins, right? Pennies and, what's 100 or so 1/5 of $1 is how much money, what's a penny, so there's a map, but you have to you have to have a foundation in money. And then clock, same thing. You as far as comparing, okay, so if you had a fifth versus a half, and then if you don't know what 1/5 of an hour is, and you don't know how to read the analog clock, that's not going to help you at all. So it was a lot of working with comparing and adding fractions, using these models as a way in for kids to kind of understand it a little bit more. But again, if you don't have,
you have to have
deficits and then skip counting too. If you can't skip count, then you can't tell time on the clock and all of that kind of stuff. Or even with money, if you can't skip count by 5s and 10s, you're not going to be able to add money. And actually, so just one quick bit, my daughter, she takes a dance class, and last year the girls that she was in with, they love to buy their snacks, right? So their parents would send them with money, and then they'd get the snacks and they'd have to pay the late. And there were some girls she was in with, her hip hop group was a little older, and these were girls that were in fourth and fifth grade, and they would be telling them, okay, you owe this much, and they just put their money down. And have no idea. They don't know how to count the money that's in front of them. And the teacher, well, no, you need another 25 cents. No, that's a nickel. You need another 25 cents. And they're just I don't know. So Grace got really into wanting to buy her snack. And so every time she struggled a little bit, I would be sitting, kind of right there, and I would just say oh well, we haven't done money yet, but we just covered pennies and dimes and nickels and all that kind of quarters. And so now I'm all right, when you go to buy your snack, now you're going to be good. You're going to know what each one of those are, and she's going to tell you, and you're going to be able to figure out to give, because she'd be oh, I got a bunch of coins. Right. And she got 2 dimes and a penny, and she thinks that she's rich. You're actually not. But okay. We haven't gotten to money yet, but now we have. So I'm looking forward to her going and buying her snack. But anyway, it's an interesting thing, because math more so than I feel some of the other subjects, when there can be big gaps that you don't can't cover at times, and then before you know it, the kid is never, and just certain things that wouldn't back in the day when we didn't have the credit cards and all that stuff. I mean, kids probably did learn about it more at home, because that was all that their parents were using. Now it's not. Or before we had the digital clock, a lot of them learned how to, because that's how they had to figure out how to tell time, and they might have learned that at home, but now it's a different ballgame. So all right. So those are our curriculums. Teachers pay teachers. We cannot say enough positive things about. There's other sites, Pinterest, you can look for, especially crafts or just fun activities. There's bloggers that are out there. The Measured Mom is a good one.
The Measured Mom. The
This Reading Mama is another one.
The Moffitt Girls is one of them. We'll put a few of our favorites again in the show notes, along with links to the curriculum that we've shared, so that you can check some of them out. But there's so much great stuff out there. I mean, so much. And I would say, for any homeschooler that's starting, especially if you've got little ones, no rush. No rush to jump into formal curriculum, unless you feel like your child's ready for it, or you want to dabble into it or whatever. I mean, my son Owen, who's kind of on the cusp, he turned 5, but technically he would miss the cutoff for kindergarten. But we're doing kindergarten work because that's kind of what he's ready for. But, you know, for example, the workbook, we're using the Math with Confidence workbook. And so, you know, and he's doing great with it, but, you know, I might take days off and he's making numbers in sand because, you know, like we're just, like, there's no rush. Like, there's just, you know, there's no rush.